Hello everybody and welcome to the latest instalment of Take 10. My name is Peter Ferrer and I'm a litigation partner in the Harneys BVI office. Very pleased to welcome one of the stars in our BVI litigation department, Kimberly Crabbe-Adams, who, apart from being my roommate, is also the president of the BVI Bar Association. Hello Kimberly.
Thank you for having me.
And I thought we'd have sort of a fireside chat really about sort of where you come from, how long you've been at Harneys, why you became a lawyer, all those sort of wide-ranging conversations.
So I am from the British Virgin Islands here in Tortola. Born and bred, primary school, secondary school, only left to go to college.
And so you went to the local Elmore Stat?
So it was called BVI High at the time.
Right.
Elmore Stat is a recent name, though I've been out of school now 20 years.
Don't
Gasp.
After high school, you went to, was it Canada?
So after high school, I did the HLSCC, H. Labadee South Community College here in BVI. So I did that for 2.5 years. And I did legal studies at HLSCC. After that, I went to Canada and I did a degree in political science. See, I'm a politician at heart. And after my political science degree, I took a year gap and I came back home and I worked for a year. And that's during the period where we were reviewing the Constitution for the first time.
And that was it AG's office or?
No, so I actually had a special project where I was working with the Constitutional Review Commission. So it was out of the Premier's office, but I had a separate department that I was the head of, and I worked directly with the commission. So I was the admin officer that pretty much did everything, set up the meetings, traveled with the commission throughout the territory, recorded the minutes, sort of hands-on with that process. And that was in 2006, 2007. After that, I went back to university to do my law degree.
And where was that?
In Durham, in England, the northeast of England.
How did you find the difference in temperature?
Well, having studied in Canada, I think I was pretty fine. It was cold. It was a different kind of cold to Canada. I adapted easily. But I really liked Canada and Durham because they were pretty small cities in comparison to like places where my siblings, for instance, went to university, like big American cities that I was like, wouldn't survive it. So I had a really good experience in Canada and in the UK. So I did my law degree there. Then when I finished my law degree, I did the bar vocational course in London, which was a culture shock for me because now London was a big city. And I did that at BPP. But that was quite interesting as well. I made some really, really great friends on the bar course, friends that I still have today. And even in Durham, I made some really great friends there. So it was good.
And did you always want to practice back in the BVI?
I always wanted to practice back in the BVI. I had no interest at all in, remaining in the UK. And I think that had a lot to do with my own sort of upbringing, being very sort of sheltered growing up in the BVI. This is all that we know. Yes, I've traveled, but here was home for me. And I didn't really see the necessity for broadening my horizons outside of the BVI. So at that time, it was for me, study, come back home. That's it. It was only after I came back home. Now, I've now been working with Harneys officially as an adult for just over 11 years. When I came back home to work as an adult with Harneys, for the first 2 years, I think it was fine. I was happy. I felt like Harneys was very much like home because I job trained here as a teenager when I was in high school. And so I've had a relationship here. I came back every summer and, worked in the corporate services side of the business. But I came back. It was only when I started my law degree that I worked in the law firm side of the business. But it was a great experience. And I saw people that I had known, throughout my teenage years. And so I felt like I was growing with the firm, although I wasn't here full time all the time.
It must have been probably quite a small firm, I imagine, back sort of.
It wasn't.
When you were a teenager.
It wasn't that small in the grand scheme. It was still quite large. It was a lot larger than other places in BVI. Like I did a stint at other places during my studies, and they were much small. No, not naming them. They were much smaller than our team here because at the time that I trained, we were in one building, the services side of the business, and the law firm, we weren't in, 2 buildings like we are now. And so it was quite a lot of us, but it still felt like home. So I came here and I decided, this is where I wanted to be. And, I was very comfortable and happy and content. But then I think as I started to get exposure to the law and, really getting into the nitty gritty and practicing and seeing the sort of work that we were doing and getting a level of exposure to, really really high profile cases and stuff and seeing where the work was coming from, I thought to myself, wait a minute, I can't stay here. I can't stay in BVI.
So where did you go?
And so I went to Hong Kong, and I was really grateful to the firm, for enabling me to do that. At the time I had been newly married, had a son. And so it was a tricky decision for me to take. But I think it was one where I thought, there are so many BVI persons that I know who would have had to leave their children at some stage to go abroad to further their education. In those instances that I could think of, it was, leaving BVI to further their education. I wasn't going to further my education. I had a spouse who was very supportive and said, you know what, I think this is a great opportunity. If you can go, I can take care of the baby. You should go.
It's very supportive as well.
Yeah. And so I decided, you know what, I'll take the opportunity. And I went to Hong Kong. And I think it was probably the single most important decision of my career to have embraced that opportunity and go to Hong Kong. Very different city, very different lifestyle to what I was used to. But I had the most fantastical experience of my career living in Hong Kong.
Were you in Central or where were you?
So when I moved to Hong Kong, I was living in the West. So the west of Hong Kong Island. It was called, now I'm going to try my Cantonese, please don't judge me, but it was Dak Do Sai, and that was Davao Road West. And so I took a tram into the office, not very far, but it was very, very different experience. And, when I would get on the tram to come in, it was filled with people going into Central for work. I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to survive this? But then it became a part of my routine, and it took me less than 10 minutes to get into the office on the tram. And so that's what I did for the first year that I was there. And then
How long did you stay in Hong Kong?
I stayed just under 2 years.
Wow. And you were coming back to see your family and
so
they were coming to see you?
What we did, I did the long haul flight, and my husband would meet me in somewhere in the States. So we would either meet in New York or we would meet in Florida. And we did that just about every 3 months. So It was quite expensive, but I would do it on long weekends. I would just fly out. And because I was flying back in time, I would sort of gain a day flying back. I would lose a day coming back, but I would always gain a day.
And what sort of work did you do in Hong Kong?
So the work that I did, I think one of the great things that I had the experience to do while I was in Hong Kong was client face, because normally here in BVI, we do a lot of our inverted commas client facing over the phone. Whereas when I was in Hong Kong, I was able to market directly, with our clients. And I was also able to have meetings where clients came into the office, and sat down. And I remember this particular client, and it was not long after I had arrived. And I thought that my partner in Hong Kong was fantastic, because I think he is the sort of person that throws you in the deep and it's either sink or swim. And so the first client that I had was a client that came in and he was like, you're going to this meeting with me. I'm going to introduce you to the client. We're going to see what he wants, and you are going to be responsible for getting him what he wants. And I thought, that's great. I'll have my partner there with me. And so we went to this meeting with this guy, and he's setting out what he wants. And then the partner says, well, guys, I'm so sorry. I just came to introduce Kim. I really have to get to another meeting. Very lovely to meet you. You're in very capable hands. Kim will take care of you. And he left. And there I was. Obviously, he's still on emails, but he left me in that meeting with this guy. And I was terrified. It turned out that the guy, he needed structuring advice, and, there was some litigation elements that he had lots of companies registered in BVI. He just had no clue and, just needed us to assist him. So there was some cross-selling between us and the litigation team and the corporate services provider. I think because I had worked in corporate services in BVI as a teenager and early 20s, I knew a lot of things to sort of steer him in the direction of.
So the partner had confidence in you, not simply abandoned you.
He didn't abandon me. He thought that I had what it took to deal with the client. The client and he became my client. He later said to me, when I came into the meeting, you were quite young. And so when the partner left, I thought to myself, what's going on? But he must know what he's doing. And then he said, but you're fantastic. And, he became my client for the time that I was in Hong Kong. And even after I came back, he was my client for quite some time. I did quite a bit of shareholder disputes when I was in Hong Kong. That was mostly the sort of work that I did. Obviously, I was never lead, but I got to be like a second or third on a big dispute between shareholders matter. And I think one of the matters that I became involved in, It started when I was in Hong Kong. I left Hong Kong. I came back to BVI. I had another baby. It went all the way to the Privy Council. There was a retrial. It has followed me. It came back.
14 years, I think.
It took about 14 years. And recently that matter ended. And, that was one that I saw from the very, very beginning through various stages of my career. I thought that was fantastic, to have been there from the beginning.
And what advice would you have for current students that are looking forwards to their career? They're not quite sure what to do. What advice would you have for them?
Well, it's funny. I don't know that as a teenager, you really have a true sense of what it is that you want to do. When I was in high school, I said that I wanted to be a lawyer. Obviously, I had no idea what that entailed. I was not one that watched a great deal of television, so it had nothing to do with television. It was almost as if I was hearing people say, I think you would be good at law. Because what I really liked was debating. And I was on, national debate teams, and I traveled for the territory for debates, and I absolutely loved debating. And so I was told, maybe you should explore a career in law. Before that, I had thought I wanted to be a doctor. Did not want to be a doctor at all. Probably sounded good. So I think for me, it has to be that you find inside you what it is that you really like. And you research things that will assist you in enhancing or building on those things that you do like. I remember speaking to a young lady once, and she said to me that she wanted to be a lawyer. And I said, why is it? Because I really love speaking with, young people, especially, I guess, because I am from BVI. I have a very close affinity to students. I do the national debates every year. I've been doing them for many years. So I really quite like interacting with the students. I spoke to this young lady, brilliant mind. And she said, I want to be a lawyer. And I remember she went to college and she was doing sort of general studies. And she would call and she would say, I really like this finance course. And she would always talk about finance and numbers in her accounting courses, but she wanted to be a lawyer. And I said to her, so what about your literature courses? What about your, social sciences? And she's like, oh yeah, they're okay. But, finance. And I said, babes, you don't want to be a lawyer. You want to go into finance. You want to go into something with numbers because that's where your passion is. That's where I hear the life in you. And now she's, she's an accountant and absolutely loves it. But I think that example reminds me to say to people, it's not what you think sounds good. It's what you think is important, what energizes you, what excites you, what drives you forward. And then you match that with a profession that will enable you to grow in that space that excites you. As a teenager saying that you want to be a lawyer, you have no idea what it is to be a lawyer. No one taught me about the long hours and, going to sleep with cases on your mind and, things on your mind. It's a lot of hard work. Lots of professions are a lot of hard work, but it has to be something that excites you and that energizes you and that motivates you. And so for me, that's what I would say to anyone who says that they want a career in law.
Excellent. We could talk for hours, actually, as we often do with my roommate. It's been very good to have you, Kimberly, and no doubt those words of wisdom will be well received.
Thank you.
Very many thanks for listening to this episode of Take 10. New episodes are being launched each month, so be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on the latest. Thank you very much.